my mind then was kind of like trying to avoid getting into a sensitive situation or getting into having to answer questions that were quite sensitive. But questions were asked, and if they were asked, it means that they were seeking answers. And the glitz and glam is the fame, but it's the work backstage that makes the game. I'm Christelle and LaVey Blundell, your host. Come with me behind the lens and watch their stories unfold. It's been great to see the progress of the Miss Runway Supermodel Australia model contestants these past few months, especially in the pre-final show. How good was that? But what I was really excited about was to go back to their very first day. Before I saw them, I've already been conversing with them online, we've already met each other digitally, but I've never seen them in person. So the very first time I saw them was at their first runway training with Runway Academy. The first time that I met the girls in person, I had to ask them to do a quick runway walk. No training, no briefing or anything like that. I asked them to walk how they think they should walk, or just walk normally as they think they should on the runway. Now looking back into how they were walking then, they've definitely made a massive improvement, because back then they were walking without too much intention. They weren't really giving too much attention to what their arms were doing, their legs or their posture or their face, their facial expression. But after the first runway training, or just within an hour in the runway training with Runway Academy, I was completely shocked to see that the girls had transformed the way they were approaching their walk. There was more power, there was more presence. When they started walking, you would just instantly look at them because they were grabbing your attention, and that's what you want as a model. And just after that 1 hour, it got me really, really excited to see how they would go in the pre-finals. Fast forward into the pre-finals, you guys saw how amazing the girls did then. But obviously between the first runway training and the pre-finals, there was many other workshops that they went through. Another one of their firsts was having their first photo shoot. The girls were so lucky to have their first shoot with an international magazine photographer, Marissa O'Donnell. Now when they started shooting, I was watching over my shoulder every now and then, just so to not put too much pressure on the girls, since this was their first time. A lot of them were quite tense. They didn't really know what to do, didn't really know how to move or how to manage their facial expressions. But Marissa O'Donnell, as they kept shooting, she was able to make them feel a little more comfortable. They were still a little bit timid, but progress was there, and that was a good sign. Now, another workshop that they went through was a positive mindsetting workshop with Tina Bangle. Now, this was really important because Miss Runway Supermodel Australia really values taking care of their mental and emotional health. And with Tina, they really dug deep into the girls' core individually. They were able to have a kind of an intimate conversation with each other, where they were able to support each other's weaknesses and support each other's strengths. And I believe that after that, they definitely went out with a brighter outlook into this competition, because not only did it take off the worries that they had that were quite hidden or tucked away in their subconscious mind, just taking away all the fears that they had, all the insecurities that they had within themselves, allowed them to discover more confidence, which gives them more power, not just on the runway, but in all areas of life. So that was really good as well. Right after the positive mindsetting workshop, I was just too curious to see how the girls were doing, because obviously that's what I'm here for. I was there to document their journey, not just their milestones, but obviously everything else that they learned throughout this whole competition. Now, straight off the workshop, the girls were quite exhausted mentally and emotionally, and I could see that. And when I was talking to Tina about it, she was explaining how it was because they really dug deep into their core. They were discovering the things that they were afraid of, they were discovering the things that they were insecure about, they were discovering the things that they were worried about. But upon identifying those things, they focused on how they could overcome that, and how they could use strategies, their personal strategies, to become more confident in themselves, to be able to achieve a greater goal that they've set ahead for themselves. So I think after the break of that workshop, the girls were definitely in a brighter mood. It seems like the mood in the whole room was a lot lighter, and that was definitely a transformation that I didn't say, but I definitely noticed. As you guys know, I'm a mental health advocate. So this Behind the Lens was built with the foundation of creating more awareness for people to take care of their mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So my favorite workshops in this whole competition was anything to do with that. So it was a positive mindsetting workshop, it was the digital and social media, taking care of how they manage themselves and how they portray themselves out there, because obviously we know some of us can get a little bit insecure. Social media is basically a highlight reel. You only see what people want to show you, and it can take a bit of a toll on you and your confidence. So getting to talk to Ava and Catherine from Ava's World magazine, getting to know how they managed themselves, how they kept their energy up, was a very eye-opening experience. But my favorite by far was when I did the Q&A session with Sharna, who is the director of Arts Care. Now what we did was we literally just sat down with the girls, and it was an intimate conversation. It was an open space where we all felt safe to just talk about the things that they were still unsure of, things that they were curious about, or some tips and advice that they feel they needed more support in. Because obviously I've been in industry a little bit longer than they already have, and Sharna has had the professional experience where she has worked with many other artists in the industry. Looking back at our Q&A session, on the last few questions that we had then, I definitely knew that where that conversation was going, because my heart was beating a lot faster, my hands were getting a little bit sweaty, and my mind then was kind of like trying to avoid getting into a sensitive situation or getting into having to answer questions that were quite sensitive. But questions were asked, and if they were asked, it means that they were seeking answers and they wanted that advice for themselves so that they could better themselves. And they were looking at myself and Sharna to be able to help them with that. And if at that moment I made the split-second decision to just let go of and let all guards down and just help all the girls with my whole heart. So what I did was I just opened myself up, and a few tears were shed. But after that whole workshop, not only did I feel lighter myself, being able to share my experience with these girls, telling them why I do what I do and why you have to learn all of these different skills from these workshops. I know that after this workshop, after the Q&A session with Sharna, the girls definitely learned a lot. To the part everyone has been waiting for. The girls, myself, the band, the photographers, the fashion designers, and the audience. We've all been waiting for this moment. The very first performance the girls will have on the runway. It was in front of a panel of judges, all their family and friends, a few other supporters that they've gained throughout this whole competition, a whole set of photographers, and the fashion designers that they have met throughout the competition as well. Now, going into that day, I was definitely very nervous, but I was more excited. You know, being nervous, I was told that being nervous and excited feels exactly the same thing, but if you tell your mind that you're nervous all the time, you might spiral into a negativity. So what I wanted to tell myself is that I'm really excited, and I really was. It was my first time hosting such a big event. I hosted it along with my co-host Isaiah Akava, and to tell you, we had a blast. We got to interview not only the judges, the panel of judges that we had, but we got to have one-on-one conversations, one-on-one interviews to feature some of our special guests and some of the guest speakers that we had along in the workshops. So that was really cool. But my most favorite part was the band playing live as the girls were walking across. It felt like I was in a Victoria's Secret show. The girls were walking down in their swimsuits. The girls were also walking down with Lakshmi's Sustainable Creations, Marissa O'Donnell, and also their own. After that whole night, it felt like a whole weight just came off my shoulders, because this was our first milestone together. This was the first milestone of our whole series with Miss Runway Supermodel Australia, and it makes me even more excited to see how the finals will go, because if the pre-finals was that fun, I can't wait to see how fun the Winter Wonderland finals of Miss Runway Supermodel Australia will be, and I'm even more excited to bring you guys along with me too. As the girls wrap up their first milestone with Miss Runway Supermodel Australia in the pre-finals, the girls are going in a little bit of a break, but we'll be right back with them as we go closer to the final day, Winter Wonderland. It sounds so magical and I can't wait to see them again. But wait, Behind the Lens is continuing with season 3, and we are going back to interviewing some amazing creatives and artists in the entertainment industry. This time it's going to be different. It's not just going to be a sit down and chat like we did in season 1 and 2. This is going to be more in-depth, more active, more lively, and way more fun with everybody else that we're going to be guesting on this show. So make sure you stay tuned, and I will see you guys then.